actually, just by doing a 1-hour program on TV, we created a change. It was a small change, but if each of the programs created something like that, this was before Black Lives Matter became a global movement.
Welcome back to another episode of the Legendz Podcast. Today I'm chatting with a close friend of mine. She's a sports consultant working primarily in football in the UK. She's worked with the likes of Rio Ferdinand, Yaya Toure, Yannick Bolasie, Women in Football, SkySports, BCOMS, Football Blacklist, the list goes on. Ooh, can't even say it. She is a big advocate for diversity and equality in sport and in general. She's a Viking hailing from Denmark. My former flatmate, Mie Ostergaard. Welcome.
Wow, thank you, Nora. I never had you say so many positive things about me before.
I know. I had to write it down. Really thought about it. But how's it going? You're currently in Denmark, correct?
I am currently in Denmark, yes. So Corona happened, so I moved from the UK, where I've been the last 10 years living with you, and moved to Denmark on a farm, because I thought it was going to be a lot more fun to be on a farm in Denmark than to be in a flat in London during lockdown.
To be fair, it is beautiful from what I've seen with the photos and videos you've sent over. For those of you who know me and who have listened thus far, you know, like I work in football, either filming or taking photos, and I have to give credit to this lady. She actually opened some doors for me. I don't know if you remember. Well, obviously you do, because we always talk about it, but I think, when was it, like 3-4 years ago now? Maybe more? I don't remember.
Yeah, it must have been 3 years ago in 2017. I introduced you to a really good friend of mine, Will Piper, who worked at West Ham at the time.
Yeah, you also introduced me to Leon Mann. Actually, I did some things for Leon prior to West Ham, and then through those two connections, just flourished.
And that's what happens in sport.
Yeah, I mean, now that I've mentioned that you've introduced me to the world of football, you want to kind of get into how you started and how you wanted to get into football specifically?
I wanted to be a sports journalist back in 2010, and I came back from my travels, moved straight to the UK, and did a 3-year degree in sports journalism. So I moved to London when I finished uni, because I thought I had just spent so much money going to university, which is free in Denmark. And I spent so much money on trying to become better at English. I thought it would be a waste of money if I moved back home now. And that was my reason to go from Staffordshire University up in Stoke, which is just south of Manchester. So I moved to London when I finished uni in 2013. And it just really took off from there. I had done some freelance work for handball, for the European Handball Federation, where a British guy I had met had contacted me saying, hey, there's an internship. I don't know if it's anything for you, but it's at the Rio Ferdinand Foundation. And I didn't really know anything about it. And I didn't really know what sport for development could be used in a city like London. So that was my very first job in sport. It was working for
not a bad first job.
Not a bad first job. It was amazing first year. So I kind of decided that I wanted to do that internship rather than doing a master degree, because it cost a lot of money. London is a very expensive city, as you know. Rent is extortionary, and I didn't make any money as an intern for 9 months. But it was a choice that I made, that I thought, this is what I want to do. This is the experience that I need to get on the career ladder. So that was kind of how I got started, and it was a good start. I was lucky, I think.
Because you shifted, I mean, you use your journalistic skills, but you shifted a little more to behind the scenes.
Yeah, so the internship I did was press and media, but my interest around sport development and how using sport could be used in a much more serious way. So we kind of used football especially to engage with young people. And in that way, we got hold of them and said, okay, well, now we're offering you free football session. What about that? We teach you how to write your CV, how to do an application. And in that way, you develop young people. And what we also did was we developed a curriculum around diversity and inclusion for young people. And it really caught my attention, like how using sport to talk about diversity and talk about different cultures. It was just really interesting, and I I grabbed hold of it. I just thought it was so interesting, and I just didn't want to be a journalist who would ask questions in the mixed zone. I found out that quite quickly on that wasn't the type of journalist that I ever wanted to be. Actually, I was much more interested in the politics side of it, and what sport can do on a bigger scale than just the playing side of it, if that makes sense.
What was the moment where you realized like that was what you wanted to do?
I actually think it's when I met Leon Mann. So I met Leon when I worked for Rio Ferdinand Foundation back in 2014. He was good friends with Rio. And later on, I moved on to the Jason Roberts Foundation, where Jason and Leon also were good friends. So I kind of bumped into Leon quite a few times in my early stage of my career. And one day Leon approached me and he was like, I really want you to come and work for me, but I also know that Jason will kick my ass if I take you away from his foundation. So I actually went self-employed when Leon contacted me, and I started to work with Leon, who really inspired me. He's a great role model, and he believes in greater things, and he also believes in fighting for equality, and it really got me going. Like the few years I experienced sport for development, but in different side than what Leon actually did, had helped me to understand it. But when I started working with Leon, it kind of made sense to me to go more into fighting racism and fighting the inequalities that happens. And Leon introduced me to the sports media world as well, which I had been a part of working in, but suddenly he took me on the outside of it and looked into it, and I thought, well, actually, all these stories that I heard and the research we did, and that showed the lack of diversity, I've been a part of that, and I've experienced discrimination in that industry. So what Leon did was really opening my eyes for what needed to be done and how bad it actually was. I just thought I was a rare case, that it happened to me, that sexism existed. And it was a lot of things that did that. I just became, wow, this is what I want to do. As a female working in football, you're constantly nervous about how you project outwards, how other people look at you. What clothes do you wear? Do you wear too formal clothes? Do you wear too short a skirt? What would other people think of you? How are you judged? When you work in a male-dominated world, you're constantly, as a female, asking yourself those questions. I think I do anyway. It's taken me quite a few years to gain enough confidence to care less, but I still care. And I want to say to the younger generation coming through now that don't think so much, be yourself. But I know how hard it is, so I know it's so easy to tell other people to do that.
No, for sure. It's perception, I think, plays a big part in it. I guess let's jump into women in football. You started working with women in football for I think it was a year, 2 years? Yeah,
just over a year. And it was interesting. It opened my eyes for all these women in football, or all these women who work in football in the UK, and how many there actually were, and how many stories there were to be told. It was a very positive experience in many ways, in terms of getting to know the industry much better and getting to fight for women who works in football. While I was there, we created a new campaign called What If, and What If was supposed to change the industry for the better. So it kind of opened the floor, so to say, on social media for people to make their own pledges. And it was just incredible. Like, we had pledges, for me the biggest, we had pledges for Wimbledon, like the tennis tournament Wimbledon, saying that they pledged to make 50% of all of their social media content, like across all of their channels, to be 50% male, 50% female. And it can seem like, wow, isn't that already happening? But 50% of your competition are female. But for me, that was like, wow, we've taken this small campaign that we really wanted to grow and taken it outside football and made a difference. So that was just incredible, working with women in football and seeing how far that you can take a campaign like that, working with other great women, who many are my role models.
I remember actually the launch party was held at Twitter headquarters in London. And it was amazing how they even I forget what their pledge was, but they even made a big pledge.
Twitter made a pledge to create emoji, a female holding a football. So we got our own women in football emoji. And I think it's actually still existing now.
That's crazy. And then even SkySports, they pledged, I think they wanted to employ a female. Was that it?
Yeah, SkySports, that was second time around when I was working at Sky, and it came around and I got to help Sky make a pledge for the women in football campaign, which was amazing, coming around to force them to do another pledge.
Like, these are massive companies known worldwide. And they started taking a part. And I mean, now more than ever, it's a big time. Like, the discussions are now ongoing. Yeah, what were you gonna say? Sorry, I cut you off before. What were you saying about it's an interesting?
I can't remember. This is what happens. I just smile and laugh.
This is usually how our conversations go. One of us cuts the other off. Mostly, probably 90% of the time, it's me cutting you off and then go off on like 5 different tangents. It's great. You've done a lot of things with Leon as he manages Yaya and Yannick. You did a lot of things for their own organizations as well, right?
Yeah, so before I joined Leon, as I mentioned, I worked for the Jason Roberts Foundation. So with the Jason Roberts Foundation, we actually created a team going to the Homeless World Cup for the first time ever. So I got a lot of experience in terms of working with players and their foundation. I did that for a few years, both with Rio and then Jason. So when I started working with Leon, as you talked about in your previous podcast, he's kind of a sports consultant with all the players underneath him. So what he wanted me to help with was the players' charity. So neither Yannick or Yaya actually have their own charities, but they do enormously amount of charity work, especially Yaya. He has a soccer school in Africa. He has partnership with Puma, who pays for a lot of coaches to be educated to learn how to be coaches in Africa. And it was just incredible being part of the players and seeing how players are giving back to their own communities and also seeing what they're burning for, because football players get so much negative media coverage when they make a bad decision or go to the wrong party, which happened to all of us. They get so much negative media coverage, and they do so many positive things. A lot of them do, not everybody of course, but a lot of them do. A lot of them wants to give back, just some of them don't know how to do it. Some of them don't have the right people involved, and I think that's why what Leon is doing is saying, okay, well, obviously on the sports side it has to work, but if you look off the pitch and you want to do charitable work, that's also how you should use a management or someone who's part of your team. And it's just been incredible to help players give back, really.
No, it's amazing. Leon and I spoke about exactly that, and just players, finding their voices and just being able to use these platforms for so much more nowadays. Well, what's going on right now with the Black Lives Matter, you even opened up that conversation a year ago with SkySports, and you came up with the idea of the show Tackling Racism, which every week it was?
Every month.
Every month there was a program where you'd have, I think, 4 panelists that are big in the industry discussing how to tackle racism, and also interviewing big players all across football. I think that was a huge program, and I don't know if you want to maybe just talk a little bit about that.
It's almost 2 years ago now, so it was December 2018. I think it was the 12th of December, don't quote me, and Chelsea was playing against Manchester City at Stamford Bridge, and Raheem Sterling was racial abused by a fan in the stands. And what happened that day changed the football industry for me to see. So the next morning, Raheem Sterling woke up and he wrote a message. And it was such a clear message to the world. It was an Instagram post with 2 pictures so you could swipe. And it was screenshots of 2 headlines. One of them, a white footballer bought a house for his mum, and they were talking so positively about how he's bought this nice house for his mum. And the next slide was a picture of a headline telling a story of one of his black teammates who's bought a house for his mum, both of them very young, and it was so negatively portrayed. It was something like splashing his money, and he doesn't even have any appearances in the first team. It was incredible that he managed just with 2 screenshots to do something so powerful. And he wrote a text underneath it talking about the media, how the media is not innocent, how the media is unconscious biased, how they're racial stereotyping people. And that moment, just for me, changed the football industry for the better, I think. So at the time I was coming to an end with my contracts with Leon, I got involved with SkySports News through the former boss there, Andy Keynes. And the day after Raheem Sterling posted that on social media, Andy asked me, Mie, can you help us? We want to do more than the traditional way of reporting racism incidents where we report it on the day and we talk about it maybe for a few hours and then it disappears again onto the next episode. We want to do more. Do you have an idea? Because he knew that I worked with Leon for many years. I created 3 football Blacklist events. I'd done BCOMS. I worked with women in football. So I worked across, at that time, quite a lot of organizations who was fighting for equality and inclusion across industries. So I came up with the idea called Tackling Racism, where I wanted to go deeper into the issues for each of the topics that I knew was problems. So we did 7 episodes in total. So we looked at fan behavior, the grassroots, we looked at the media, anti-Semitism, women, British Asian, and we did some special programs around all of them. So it was quite weird how things came around. Like suddenly I had a platform to create something huge that I never actually done before. I never made TV before. I was back to using a bit of my journalism degree, which I hadn't used for many years actually, but also using my very broad network that I created in the football industry, where I knew both players, but board members and people like Leon, that's equality, diversity, inclusion kind of consultants, specialists within that area. So that's kind of how it came around. I was lucky in a way that I was given a platform, but it wasn't without any controversials. A lot of people at Sky Sports, which rightly so, thought, why is this person who's white coming into our organization and gets this platform? We've been here for many years and we've never seen anything. We've never been given a voice. And I understand that, and I think it's really important to listen and to understand why people feel like that. But it's something I had to learn as well, that how people perceive me. Why do I care? I'm white, I'm Danish, I'm not a footballer. Why do I fight against racism in football? Why do I fight so hard to be an anti-racist and try and get other people with me on that way? A lot of people would ask that question. A lot of people would probably also question it. And I have to start understanding and accept that's how some people feel, and not everybody gonna get on board right away. So that's one of the things I would say I've learned. Not that you asked me about it, but
no, but I was going to get to that afterwards. I know because in how many times we've spoken about it, and I've seen it even until we're all equal, until everyone's not seeing color. I don't see why we all shouldn't be speaking about it.
Racism has existed for more than 400 years. Like, it existed for so long. It's not something, unfortunately, we can eliminate overnight. But what we can do is fight against it and speak up. And I think that's where we are now. As you're saying, we need to talk about this. And it needs to be uncomfortable for especially white people to talk about this. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we're going to change. But we can't just talk about it. We also need the right people to make the decision to change this. So when I created Tackling Racism, like, one thing is that we did the programs, which was for me doing an insight. But when we also analyzed the results of these programs, actually, we saw that after a grassroots program, the FA, which is the Football Association in the UK, in England, who deals with grassroots football in England, they hired 2 new people to do racism reports or discrimination reports within grassroots football. And I thought, wow, actually, just by doing a 1-hour program on TV, we created a change. It was a small change, and I'm not saying that it's massive or changing anything as such, but if each of the programs created something like that, and that was before, so this was back in 2019, this was before Black Lives Matter became a global movement, but we will still find that some people will refuse this, will refuse to talk about it, will refuse to understand it, which is why it makes it so hard to work in this area, because you find resistance from everywhere you go, and mostly from white straight men at the top who's just so afraid of us. And because we want something different, our generation wants something different than the generation before us who sits on the top right now.
You spoke with one activist and lawyer. His name was Cyrus Mehri. Am I saying that correctly?
Cyrus Mehri.
And he helped conceive the idea of the Rooney Rule in the NFL. It's even been adopted in the EFL about 5 years ago.
Yeah, I just to explain, so the Rooney Rule is not about who you hire, it's about who you get in front of the people that you're interviewing. So the Rooney Rule was introduced, I think it was 2005, it's quite a few years ago now, because of the lack of black coaches in the NFL. It was like, how can so many players be black, but none of the coaches are? Like, how does this make sense? And it comes down to, especially in sport, and I think it's across the US, in Canada, or in the UK, it's you're hiring your mates. And when it's all white people at the top, they're going to hire the white mates. So the Rooney Rule was an idea that you had to interview, I think it was 20%, so 1 in 5 had to be from a black background, or black or Asian or ethnic minority background. So to show that there's a fair process. It was not about that you had to hire someone that wasn't white. It was more about making it a fair process for everybody. So that was adopted, and I think at the beginning it slowly made increase in terms of diversity of coaches and managers and senior positions, but it actually took a dip.
A dip.
Told you my English isn't great. It took a dip, and then they realized, well, as long as if you're interviewing a person and it's still 3 white men sitting on the panel interviewing it, it's not actually going to change, because people have their unconscious bias in terms of who they're interviewing. So they actually discovered that it wasn't enough. So it also became, they adopted a new rule, I think it was 2 years ago in the NFL, where they're saying, well, someone on the interviewing panel could not be a white straight man, basically, and to make that more diverse as well. And it's something that you can take into all companies, not just in the sports world, but in all positions where you're hiring. So when I met Cyrus, and he told about the idea behind the Rooney Rule, and he's still very active in it, and he's a massive human rights activist. He's just incredible. I think I told you, Nora, I was just starstruck when I met him, because he fought.
And you don't get
Donald
starstruck.
No, I don't. But he got me there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I wanted to be a human rights lawyer after I met him. But he definitely inspired me to keep going. That it's a bloody tough industry to be, and not just industry, but it's a tough area to work in, because it's setbacks, and it's people who doesn't understand you. It's people who won't see it, what you see. And the problem is, once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. You cannot unsee all the inequalities that happens within this world once you know it. You just can't. And it's so frustrating when people can't see it, and because you just want to convince everybody.
It's baffling. Like, where do you start with those types of people? But one of the key words is educate. I mean, a lot of it makes you so angry when you see stuff like that, but then they'll never understand if that's how you kind of go at them, with anger. But one thing I learned is educate. Try your best to explain it to them, and not, because they're never going to learn anything otherwise.
No, definitely not. But it was fantastic meeting him, and I wish for everybody to meet someone who will make them understand, who will make their light bulb go boom, and they get it, and they want to do better.
Do you want to touch on anything else?
I thought about funny stories. It was more like an amazing story. So last year,
You take
when
amazing stories. Let's go.
Yeah, I can brag a little bit, right? Now I talk for so long, and I haven't bragged at all. So
I haven't talked at all, but yeah. Next time you tell me I go off rambling, I'll just remind you of this. I have video evidence now.
Normally it's you doing this.
I know, it's true. All right, go on.
So when I worked at SkySports, one of our tackling racism programs, we were flying to America with the Chelsea squad, and they were playing a friendly match against Boston. Do you remember? You came out.
God, yes. Yes, I did.
So I flew with Chelsea's first team on a private jet. Like, I have never tried anything like that. Like, that plane was just insane. And I sat in the back, as the journalist did, with my colleague Roger Clark. And the stewardess comes around like, do you want something to drink? And I looked at the menu, and there's a whole menu for drinks. I was like, oh, this. And I had like 5 alcoholic drinks next to me. And Roger's like, Mie, what are you doing? I'm like, what? This is a once in a lifetime. What? I'm not going to miss out on all this alcohol. Free bar.
Oh god,
that was pretty incredible. Yeah, it was a nice hotel.
While the Chelsea team is like 2 rows in front of you. I almost when you were leaving Boston to go back to London, I had come from Toronto to Boston. I was almost gonna say I will just hop on that flight with you just to go on the flight just to London, and I'll buy a ticket back because the flight looked incredible. That opportunity.
Yeah. It was pretty incredible, I would say. Yeah. So last year, I traveled a lot with Sky Sports during the program. So I went to Boston on the private jet with Chelsea first team. I went to Israel with Chelsea's women's team, which was also incredible. Did some charitable work where they do sports development as well, where it's young girls from Israel and young girls from Palestine who was playing football together, which was just amazing seeing projects like that. I went to Poland to Auschwitz, the concentration camp, together with Chelsea. Again, Chelsea are doing some incredible work around anti-Semitism.
I was just about to say, Chelsea's whole inner organization has been doing great work to push the team to be advocates for social issues.
They've done incredible work. Yeah, definitely. And what they're doing in terms of, because Chelsea Football Club as fans have a bad reputation. So also again, Stamford Bridge, where Raheem Sterling was racial abused. But what Chelsea are doing to try and fight that, I think it's incredible that they no longer want that on their back, on their names. They are actually trying to not just ban people, but actually educate people to become better people. Like, they could just not care and ban them for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
It would be cheaper for them. But as a club, they said, no, we want to do something about this. So all the fans that have been banned for anti-Semitism at Stamford Bridge been taken to Auschwitz to show them what it means, their anti-Semitic language that they're using, what it actually is. And it's just incredible seeing where football actually uses the power for good. It can actually change the world for the better.
It's great to see.
Incredible. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it a lot. And also the opportunities you've given me and the opportunities to learn more. And I think we see eye to eye on a lot of things. And it's incredible to have friends who can, support each other and work in the same spaces. It's hard to find. But yeah, so thank you. And where can people find you? Socials?
Social media. So my fantastic Danish name is Mie Oe across all channels.
Or just type in Oestergaard and you'll find her. For all the UK people.
Is that an hour waiting to make that joke?
Yeah. No, I didn't. But I thought about Leon and I was like, it cracks him up. So I was like, I got to throw it in somewhere.
Oh, God.
But anyway, thank you so much for coming on. And thanks for anyone listening. Mom. My mom says hi, by the way. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and get on board. And and check out the next episode. Anyways.
Thanks, Nora.